to him, and he lost there.
Right, and so we're talking about an issue where, if he wasn't able to win on the merits in front of a panel that included two Republicans and one Democrat, then clearly that doesn't bode well for his chances in front of a panel that was, seven Democrat, four Republican. But I guess that raises the question here: if on the merits the Court of International Trade panel found that what he was doing was illegal, why would a panel that is 7-4 Democrat Republican, why would they impose this stay? Why not just allow the lower court's ruling to stand while they then go ahead and litigate this issue on the merits?
I think what goes on in a lot of cases like these, when you have a very high profile case that goes to the powers of the government to operate in its way, you have judges who are reluctant to make rulings without briefing. So they do what is preserving the status quo. Remember, in the ruling yesterday, it didn't essentially go into effect until 10 days. So they could have had this giant change in the process of government before they made a decision on the merits, knowing that this is going to be appealed to the Supreme Court. So that's why there's this routine part of the process, and the system is slow and it's frustrating. It happened in the case of, as I recall, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that there was an administrative stay put in place where we eventually had the Supreme Court saying, no, people do have due process rights. You can't end run that. Habeas corpus does still exist. Notice and a hearing are mandatory. So the administrative stay, there's going to be a lot of spinning about it, a lot of spinning from the White House claiming vindication that, oh, these judges overstepped. But what happened here is something that's very routine that we've seen twice before from the Supreme Court. And right now, he's going to a tough panel.
Well, obviously, this issue is really important that this gets figured out, because every day that these tariffs remain in place is another day that small businesses might be one step closer to shutting down, or folks who are trying to afford something can't because of the tariffs that are in place. And so how quickly do we anticipate that the federal appeals court is going to litigate this issue? And is there some degree of urgency given the fact that trade is something that's happening every day, and it's not something that we can just put off?
Right. Well, the appeals court said in their ruling, they set a schedule for motions. And for an appeal, it's brisk. Their plaintiffs are going to respond to the government's motions by June 5th. And then the end of the briefings on this will be June 9th. So it's very possible we'll see it that this stage of the litigation coming to a head next month. And we're almost at this month. So, like I said, the whole process of this, the appeals, it drags it out. And these are issues that deeply affect a lot of people. As you noted, Brian, there's small businesses that are going to be feeling a lot of pain because of the uncertainty of this. And their only solace will be the TACO acronym that Trump will chicken out anyway if the courts don't provide the relief. But this is the way the process goes, and let no one be misled that this is a great victory for Trump, and maybe he does have the legal power to do this. All this was a routine ruling saying, okay, we'll keep things as they were until we get the case, rather than wait 10 days later, giant shift in government, and then maybe it goes the other way because the Supreme Court makes a decision in Trump's favor. Not saying that would happen. I think the ruling by the Court of International Trade makes absolutely clear that Congress has the power to impose tariffs. No other president felt otherwise until Donald Trump, and claimed a power to do this under this law that is absolutely irrelevant to tariffs, mentioned tariffs, and was in fact meant to restrain the president from using a national emergency to do whatever he wants with the economy.
Right. Well, look, now this thing has already been ruled not in Trump's favor at the trial court level. It's going to be in front of an appeals court panel that is pretty clearly not falling in Trump's favor. I mean, again, 7 Democrats to 4 Republicans. And so if the appeals court decides to rule in the same way that the Court of International Trade panel ruled, which is to say against Donald Trump, does it make it that much more difficult then if and when this thing inevitably gets in front of the Supreme Court? Is the Supreme Court going to see this and say, okay, we've got a trial court panel saying that Trump has no ability to be able to do this. We have an appeals court that agrees with them. And so does that have some bearing on how the Supreme Court ultimately rules?
Well, the Supreme Court will have the lower court's decision showing absolutely filleting the legal arguments that the Trump administration brought forward. They will go through it went through the history. It went through the writings of James Madison. It took a giant historical detour through this and went deep into the law. I think that record.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is all of that is clear, but when it comes to somebody like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, right, how much weight does it actually carry? Because these people aren't acting in good faith. And so if they were, right, I mean, look, if these people were acting in good faith, then we wouldn't have the criminal immunity for a president that was created out of whole cloth. And then you have these justices that are pretending that it's somehow in the Constitution. If these people were acting in good faith, then Section 3 of the 14th Amendment wouldn't be disregarded as it relates to Donald Trump and his previous embrace of and aid or comfort to those who engaged in an insurrection. And so clearly these people are willing to either create out of whole cloth or disregard the plain text of the Constitution in deference to Donald Trump. And so does it matter in a situation like this where you can have a lower court ruling absolutely filleting this idea that Donald Trump and his administration came up with, which is that like he all of a sudden has power that just didn't exist yesterday because he's anointed himself this all-powerful being. And so that's what I'm really trying to figure out here.
Right. Well, there was never a doctrine of criminal immunity until the Supreme Court created one. And right, I get your point, Brian, and it's a good one. I'm not going to predict the future here. There is going to be a decision on this one way or another. It's going to come from the Supreme Court. I will say, when there are such incredible power grabs here, where the president is claiming the power to ignore the writ of habeas corpus, was 9-0 against him. When he was claiming the power to deport the folks in Texas to a third-party country that they had never been, that was a 7-2 ruling against. With the immunity decision, that was very close, and it was an untested thing, and it was a thing that the Supreme Court created out of whole cloth, and there are those decisions, and we'll see what happens. This one is shaping up to be in such a position that it's going to be very hard for even this Supreme Court to concoct an intellectual fig leaf to create a power that isn't to be found in the Constitution or the law. But let's see, we have a long road ahead of us.
Yeah, you've got Clarence Thomas saying, hold my beer, challenge accepted. Okay, so as far as the Supreme Court goes, one more question on this, and that is, can the Supreme Court, and do you anticipate that the Supreme Court will opt to take up this case if we do see identical rulings from the trial court level and the appeals court? Can't if they agree with the appeals court, can't they just say, we're not going to touch this thing, the lower court ruling stands?
They could. I think what we've seen so far is the giant cases tend to want to accept them. So that'll be the pattern here. But absolutely, they can take a look at this and say, there's no real question or controversy here for us to look at.
Right. Well, that'll also be helpful because then, for example, you don't have district splits.
Right. Well, I mean, here, An interesting thing is shaping up with the tariffs thing. There's litigation right now